What's up, Total Human Optimizers? Here we are with one of the original gangsters, the OGs, one of the first people who ever got in touch with us in support of our products. Professional tandem skier legend, Bear Woznick. What's going on, my friend? Good to
Hey,
finally have you
aloha,
on the
Aubrey. It's so
podcast.
great to talk with you. Actually, it's a world champion tandem surfer. If you
World
saw,
champion tandem surfer.
if you had seen me skiing, it'd probably lend a little bit
Did
of
I say
humor.
did I say tandem skier?
Yeah.
Well, that's
Well,
because I just got off the mountain
yeah.
of skiing, and my brain is still thinking snow.
I only ski because of the great food on the top of the hill. I mean, if you saw me ski, I provide a lot of entertainment.
Yeah, there's not a lot of slopes in Hawaii, although the racers do train down in New Zealand
Oh no,
when it's the
in my
summer.
home in Molokai, the cross country skiers used to come and they'd shush across our sandy beach. We have the longest white sand beach in the world, and they would go down there and they'd just be shushing in the heat.
In
So,
their what? In their bikinis or what?
no, these are the guys, unfortunately.
I mean, that sounds like the way to do it. If I was a cross country skier, I'd go to Hawaii and train
Go to
on the beach
Hawaii and
too.
train.
Yeah, it's a brilliant idea. I don't know who came up with that, but they should be applauded for that.
Yeah.
Surfer. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, tell us about some of your professional history. I mean, it's hard enough to surf, let alone surf with another person on the board.
Well, tandem surfing. I mean, when I was a kid, I saw that. I was standing on the cliffs above Santa Cruz, Steamers Lane, and I saw some of these guys. They were doing basic lifts, just the girls standing on their shoulders and things like that. And I said, I just got to do that someday. And of course, I surfed basically my whole life, but I kind of have the build to be someone who lifts a woman as opposed to someone who's gonna walk the nose and things like that. So, but tandem surfing is an extreme sport. It's one of the original ones. It goes back for centuries. But what we do is like the hardest lift is where you lift the girl. She stands in your hands and you lift her over your head. You extend your arm.
Wow.
What we do where the girl will interlock hands and she does handstands. I won my world titles with my partner doing the splits over my head, and all that means is that I had a great partner.
Yeah. So it's kind of like acro yoga on a surfboard.
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, yeah, a lot of the acro yoga people come our way, and vice versa. When it got more extreme, it started to get more extreme when the guys on Muscle Beach and Venice Beach started working out with the surfers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we started to get more extreme. But we surf. The biggest wave I've ever surfed with a partner is in the 18 to 20 foot range.
Wow.
But you got to have a partner that really wants to do that. And when you surf waves that big, you really don't. You have to limit what lifts you're doing. But when you're using your partner, when you're really flowing together, I'll use my partner to really generate power. Like when I'm doing my bottom turn, I'll put her in the lift at that point because then she's exploding and I'm using my explosive leg strength to make that bottom turn. And then when I hit the lip, I may bring her down and as I lean my body way back to the left, I'm almost falling off the board and I can just tell her to sink. And it's almost like someone in a sailboat. She'll just pull her head down, bring me back so I can wrap the another bottom turn and go down the face. And so it's an extreme sport and it's something that involves a lot of training. I'm just so thankful for on it and what they've done for me to extend my career and help me branch out in other areas. So
Well, I appreciate the compliment and the support, but I'm still stunned at what you're describing there because I mean, just to get the amount of time necessary, and that's one of the challenges with surfing is it's not like a constant thing that you can practice. When you're practicing juggling, for example, you just constantly have ground and you have clubs and you just keep throwing them until you get good.
yeah, I actually have a friend who juggles while he surfs.
Yeah, of course
Yeah,
you
but
do.
it's true. You can't. You've got 9 second intervals, or if you're lucky, 30 second intervals to train in. And so it's really cool because we boil things down to like one word. A one-word statement can mean a whole paragraph. If we're dropping in and I say calibrate, my partner knows exactly what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And on the board, it's very dynamic. The man really has to be the leader because I'm the one that's legs are on the board. I'm the one that's choosing the waves. I'm the one that's surfing. And so there really is, I have my responsibilities, she has her responsibilities, but the level of communication is intense. And then, but eventually you just kind of become like a machine. You just flow together.
Yeah. Now, is your partner also your wife's girlfriend or?
If you want to stay married, it's probably not a good idea. Because, I mean, you think of surfing as this kind of, it's a beautiful sport. And part of what we're doing is displaying grace and beauty. But you're in paddle battles out there. It's very aggressive when you're competing. Even when you're just going out to surf waves, I mean it's an extreme situation. And so the reality of it is I've always chosen professional partners. My wife is a not a world champion, a national champion gymnast from Sweden, and we do tandem surf together. But I would never say, honey, I love you. Do you want to go to war with me? Because that's really, even though it looks beautiful from the beach, the extreme amount of training and the on-reserve statements about, hey, I need you to do this and you need me to do that. It really takes it's like a business relationship, or I don't know how to say it. You're going to war together.
No, I understand that. And I've also tried to make suggestions to my girlfriend, and I'm always the last suggestion that gets taken. We could be a room full of 10 people and I could be the expert in the topic. But
I remember the world title in 2006 was right in front of my house in Waikiki Beach. And I remember all the couples that were couples. All the teams that were couples, when they would get to the beach, the guy would go one way and the woman would go the other way, so.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Training for tandem surfing is really unique too, because you think about it, you're training, you got to train every single muscle in your body to do that. You have to have you're lifting really with your core, and yet you have to have those stabilizer muscles in your shoulders to hold that lift. And if you want to ruin your career, don't engage your lats when you extend that lift. Don't let your shoulders float, or you're going to rip out you're going to lose your rotator cuff. So there's just so many different elements of flexibility training, strength training, and agility training, and
so tell us. Speaking of that, tell us about some of your kind of Dryland training efforts that help prepare you for the sport.
Well, Dryland. No, actually, I don't go to gyms anymore. I have trained with some great people. Deadlifts, of course, are the ultimate lift, and I've trained a lot in those, but it just got to the point where I do all my training. What changed my life and allowed me to do most of my training on the beach or in the water is stand-up paddle surfing. When you stand up paddle, when you're surfing, especially in bigger surf or bumpy or bad conditions, you're working every single muscle in your body to the nth degree. I mean, I have one friend who, in Hawaii, we have a lot of flat-footed people, and he was flat-footed from wearing his slippers or his flip-flops. He gained a 1-inch arch in his foot just from stand-up paddling. My legs, my calves, my thighs, my core feels like it's made out of steel when you stand-up paddle, because you're working every single muscle, and you're doing interval training when you're paddling out through surf, or and you're doing aerobic, anaerobic, everything. My normal regimen is I paddle out from my house. I paddle 1.5 miles up the beach, and there's 9 breaks on the way to Ala Moana Bowls from my house. And I just pick off a wave at each one of those spots, turn around and paddle back, pick off a wave on my way back, and that's about an hour and a half. If there's some good surf, then one spot, I'll stay for a while. But that could be a 2 to 2.5 hour workout. And by the time I get back, every part of my body just feels so great. And then my beach workout, there's nothing like, you got to be careful when you're working out in the sand, because you can really pull an ankle. Or what happens when you work out in the sand, you strengthen ligaments you don't know you have. And if you're not careful, you can ruin some of your joints if you don't build up those ligaments or those muscles that are protecting your joints. But I work out in the sand somewhere between 4 to 8 miles every day too.
And what do those workouts consist of?
Well, my basic workout now on the sand is walking, is basically interval training. But when I was training with my partner Crystal for the world title, she would sit on my shoulders and we'd go for a run, or she would stand on my shoulders without I would just hold on to her calves and we'd go for a run. We did explosive, frog jumps. So we're looking for explosive strength. Strong doesn't help. Explosive strength is what you want. And so we did a lot of plyometrics, and there's nothing like doing your jumps out of sand.
Right.
And of course, the other thing we do is we just do a lot of, it's kind of funny, because I remember when you guys asked me to send you an email of what my basic workout is, and I go, well, I basically lift women. So the strength training part of me is
I've got this all wrong, Orlando. Bear's got it. Bear had this shit figured out way before us. What the hell are we doing with the Honor Academy?
I could teach you how to do it. Go to your gym, teach you how to lift women, because it's a great workout for the woman too, because she's jumping and she's holding her core. When the key to a woman is she needs to lock in that lift, so she's stable. And then so it's when I'm training for world title, I'm getting so strong from just lifting women. You never did that before?
I mean, I've lifted a few women in my day, Bear, but I wouldn't call it exactly my workout routine.
Well,
But
really, that's strange. I
but
don't know
now,
why you didn't think of that before.
but now I can never go back. Now that you've showed me the light, that's it.
That's my
I'm
fantasy. I
ditching
want to teach Aubrey. I want to teach Joe Rogan
how to lift women.
I get and think about it. I get paid to do that. I get paid to pick up women.
That's great, Bear. You gotta figure it out. And you're living in Hawaii. I mean, you made
seriously,
some important good decisions early, I think.
One of the things about tandem men is they're super respectful of the tandem women, because if you're not, you get a reputation, and guess what? No one's going to surf with you anymore. And they're also, tandem men are famous for sacrificing their own bodies in the middle of a wipeout to protect their partner. Every single tandem guy I know is like that, because if you're not like that, you don't tandem surf, because word gets around really fast. So you look at most tandem guys, and it's kind of funny because you'll see certain getting banged up on their shins and lacerations in their sides and being dragged across the reef on their back while they're holding their partners. So, yeah, we have a great respect for our partners.
Of course. The code of honor and the code of honor exists.
Bushido code. Of course, I'm a ninja. I'm a second-degree ninja black belt.
Are you really?
Yeah, so that's different than Bushido.
Yeah, you're natural enemies.
Yeah, I guess we were.
But it seems like you have a little bit of that. You're a Bushido ninja, which is
yeah. Well, the ninja mindset is so different, and we train a lot with our minds. When you train, I was fortunate to train with Bill Poet and Master Stephen Hayes, who was the first white ninja. And so the whole ninja ethic is totally different than the Bushido ethic.
Wasn't that a movie, The First White Ninja, or was that
yeah,
something else?
Master Stephen Hayes, he was the guy that went to Japan and brought ninjutsu back to America. He when he went to Japan, he was like me going to my homeland of Norway and going, "Hey, I want to become a Viking." Everyone would just look at me funny, right? So when he goes to Japan, he goes, he had hints that there was a couple of the ninja clans where they were, but when he started asking people about it, they looked at him like he was crazy. But eventually, the great Grandmaster Hatsumi revealed himself to him as being, the ninja sensei there, and you would never know it. Most people in the town didn't know it, but they allowed him to start training, and then over time he brought that back to America, and he's still he's like Obi-Wan Kenobi to me.
Yeah,
and it's hilarious to see a guy like that just inflict so much pain.
So some
no
of
injury, but pain.
So some of us, the only exposure we've had to ninjutsu is from movies, right? Number one,
yeah.
And number two, there was a fighter who entered the UFC, and he did not have a lot of physical attributes, and he got stomped out pretty quick. And he was a ninjutsu practitioner, and those are like the two reference points. So tell us a little bit more about that, because that's super fascinating.
We like Gracie style jiu-jitsu. I mean, as soon as I had all the black belts over to my house during the first UFC fight, and we see Hoist laying on his back winning, and I'm going, what is that? So we started training that. But there's certain things that we do, like taking your tear duct out and things like that you wouldn't do in a fight. So it's more of a combative type art, but I have a lot of respect for the ninja as a combative art. I know Master Hayes has worked a lot with the military and their new techniques. So, but you won't see a ninja type of fight, because it's about breaking legs and things like that.
Right.
It's not a sport.
It's for maximum damage immediately.
It's not designed to be a sport.
Yeah.
But MMA, I think, comes closer than anything there is out there to the real. I mean, it is the real thing.
Yeah. There are a few. There are a few rules. That was one argument that I had an old striking instructor. His name was Pat Johnson when I was growing up, and when the UFC hit the scene, he said, and everybody's saying, "Oh, it's the real thing. It's the ultimate decider." He's like, "No, not really. If someone takes me to the ground, I'll just I'll rip their eyes out, or I'll pull their.
You're not going to hit anybody in the throat.
Pull the nostril out, or I'll, whatever else he was going to do that you can't do under those rules that could kind of neutralize some of the wrestling techniques.
Exactly. You're not going to hit him in the throat.
Yeah. Well, you actually can hit in the throat. I think that's legal.
With an extended knuckle fist, it's going to break their throat.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know. MMA is just such a great sport. It's such a chess match, and it was such a revelation. I'll tell you, when all the black belts came over to my house, I didn't realize that I had pay-per-view on, and I didn't know that the show that they were coming over was a replay. So I watched the original, and then I was giving them all my guesses on who was going to win which fight. And of course, I was 100% right because I had seen the whole fight before they got there. But it was a wake-up call for us. I started in my Taekwondo days and Shotokan days and that stuff. And you have to get real. If you think of yourself as taking self-defense, you better take something that's really going to. I mean, I started out by doing my. I don't even know what those were called.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
That was going to save my life in a street fight.
Yeah. Yeah. So the history of ninjutsu is interesting too for me, is because, really at that time, the samurai had complete autonomy to basically do whatever they wanted to anybody, right? And I as far as my understanding is that ninjutsu was part of a reaction towards that. I mean, the samurai had full armor, sharp swords, everything in their advantage. So the ninja was a way to kind of counterbalance that using surprise, stealth.
It was guerrilla warfare.
Guerrilla warfare, exactly.
Right. Yeah, and so we learned how to catch, stars and things like that. A lot of it is psychological too. Some of it is psychological training too on how to. I've only had to use. I've used my training a lot in staying away from trouble.
Right.
But I have used it a couple of times where I needed to, and I've noticed that the greatest takeover when I needed to in a reactionary self-defense situation was the psychological benefit that it gave me, because ninjutsu is different from we have earth, wind, water, fire, and the void. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that happens when you're not the attacker is you're kind of shocked, you're kind of surprised, right? You're not in fire mode, you're not ready to punch someone out. Your first reaction might be to step backwards. Well, we teach you how to be afraid. We teach you how to have that momentary, motion back, and then how to flow back into the fight right away with that same energy. So we study a lot of the psychological approaches too. But I would say that my training as being a second degree ninja black belt makes me a beginner compared to what these guys are doing in the octagon.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. Yeah. And I try to roll. I mean, I do my Gracie training, but my knees and my neck and everything it takes its toll on you.
For sure. Yeah. So what else, Bear? I mean, I'm super curious. You lift women professionally. You're a surfer. You're a ninja.
Well, I pedaled my bicycle across the United States.
All right, there we go.
And I've paddled my surfboard across the treacherous channel, the Molokai Channel. It's known as one of the most treacherous channels in the world. Surfed the Mascaret, the tidal bore in France. But I got to let me talk to you about this company called On It for a second.
Okay, Bear.
Okay, there's this company called On It, and the first product I ever tried from them was called Alpha Brain. And I have ADHD, which is a blessing to me and a curse to almost everybody else in my life. But I found it really helped me to focus. Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking last night as I was having my vivid dream, this came to me that since I started taking Alpha Brain, I wrote this book. It was published by the hottest publisher in the world right now, Hachette Books, Deep in the Wave of Surfing, Guide to the Soul. I've written 2 more manuscripts. I was on a reality show, Clean Break, which is, by the way, on Fox Fuel, the MMA channel.
Cool.
It was my concept, and I got to be a member of that cast. And we have another pilot show that we're working on. And I have my syndicated national radio show. And think about it, it's all been since I've been using Alpha Brain. I really think that it's given me an edge. I'm not kidding. And then, of course, I'm 61 years old. The last 2 events I surfed, and I surfed in a Legends event just as a solo surfer. And then my last 10 event, I won both of them. And I'm 61 years old. And I think On It might be my one of my secrets, Well, it extends my workout. When I go out and stand up paddle for 2 hours, it's. And then I had this adventure retreat that I do these adventure retreats, and I had one just a couple months ago. And we kind of take guys out of their comfort zone, throw them out of airplanes, or throw them surfing or something, and we teach them about the 7 virtues. But I look at the people around me that are my age, and I go, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was that old. So I know that training like this and taking these earth-growing nutrients, I know I feel more alive and more productive now in the last 4 years than I have, my whole life.
Well, we're honored to support you in that role, but you got to give yourself a lot of the credit as well. I mean, our products can certainly help give you an edge, and I think as we were talking before we got on the podcast with the recent study results, now we can. There it is, it's a little TPC action.
I'm so
With the
glad you started
Reese's.
putting those in packets, man. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense. We have evidence now that alpha brain in that double-blind randomized trial does improve the beta theta ratio, which is associated with, improving focus. So no doubt, we're helping
What I
a
liked
little bit
about
play the
that
part.
was you did it with healthy people in a young demographic.
Yeah,
If
that
it can
was
help healthy people, if it can, even people who are doing really well, if it can boost their performance. If you're not doing so well and you take it, it's going to have an even more dramatic.
absolutely, yeah, and in future, so that was kind of the holy grail, was to get healthy already, strong people even better, and if we could prove that, we knew we could prove anything else. And so we'll probably in some subsequent studies, we'll study some people with some more challenging conditions, and
Then I
hopefully
could
get
be
some
in your
really-
study.
Bear, you're already killing it. You don't need to be in a study. Everybody wants to be. I mean, I think you are pretty much every kid's dream already. You're a ninja, you're a surfer, you're around women all the time, you live in Hawaii. I mean, come on,
Well,
man.
Hawaii's not that awesome, I mean, it gets old every day. You walk
Somebody in
out and
Detroit's
you're like, what month is it again?
yeah, it's terrible. It sucks.
Winds
Right.
blowing through the palm trees and all that kind of stuff. It's not all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, I'm sure. You mentioned something in this adventure retreats. You said you teach them about the 7 virtues.
Yeah.
What are the
What's
7
the
virtues?
philosopher, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I interrupted you because I got too excited. What was your question going to be?
Oh yeah. What are the 7 virtues? What is it that you're teaching these people?
Well, you've studied classic philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
as have I. I love to read old books,
Mm-hmm.
and I love reading. So I don't understand them that well, and thank God for audiobooks. So Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. I love Augustine and I love Aquinas.
Mm-hmm.
And so the four cardinal virtues are, of course, justice. See if I can get them all: prudence, fortitude. And I don't like to use temperance because it seems like a bunch of old fogey ladies would use that word. So I use self-mastery.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the area of self-mastery and fortitude, those are two great, virtues that we need for our, in our athletic training. And then Paul added 3 more. St. Paul, who wrote a big chunk of the New Testament and laid his head on a stone, speaking of fortitude, before the sword came down and cut his head off, pretty much a good example of fortitude. He added faith, hope, and love.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about the 4 theological, those are all the 4 cardinal virtues. Cardinal meaning, like in the Latin, it means hinge. Like that is the hinge to the gate to the good life, as Socrates said that the sunum bonum, the good life is if you live a life of virtue. But it's kind of tough. And those virtues tend to be virtues of moderation and self-control, where the theological virtues of faith, hope, and love, you can just let go of those. But it's kind of paradoxical. You don't need hope unless you're in a hopeless situation. You don't need faith.
So the only thing I would disagree with is I don't know if you do need hope. I think you can use faith as a more powerful, empowering surrogate.
Well, I think it depends on your definition of hope.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of hope as, I sure do hope so, and it's a kind of a worrier,
right?
That's no virtue at all. If hope, see, the thing is, I think of fortitude as a fullback putting his head down and like boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
I think of hope as someone looking up like a wide receiver to catch a football. But if you think of it as, I sure do hope so, that mealy mouth sort of weak sort of feeling, then yeah, I would agree with you. But hope that the word desire in the Latin you use, it means the same as the word for star.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you change your desire to look up for something, and I know you do, you look up for something, a higher perspective, a bigger vision, then in that sense, hope is good. And I can see how you can compare the two,
sure.
Faith and hope. But the mealy mouth worrying sort of, I sure hope so, where you're sitting on your hands and not doing anything, it's disgusting.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's a lot of people spend so much time in hope. And by doing that, you're saying, I hope something outside of my control happens to my life. Whereas faith, is an empowering force. And you can take it out of the religious context. Faith is just belief and acceptance of some future event that's going to happen.
Well, faith leaps. Faith
right.
leaps. Try jumping out of an airplane sometime. That takes some faith.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah,
Totally.
faith is not just faith is actually an action is an active participation, but I think that hope is like that too. It's just a little bit different. Of course, love is just self-donation.
Mm.
It's just wanting the true good of the other person,
Or
and
the
I
true
see
good
that
of the true good
in
of
your
all,
life.
you know.
I see that in your life and your company.
Thanks, man.
It's
I
obvious.
appreciate that. I appreciate enjoying talking the subtleties of philosophy with you as well. We'll have to have a, I don't know what you do out there. Maybe you have coffees or maybe you have beers. What are you into out
Uh,
there in
uh,
Hawaii, Bear?
we enjoy our good Onnit coffee. I haven't had mine yet. Hey, when is Onnit coming out with beer?
I don't know. We'll have
No,
to, we'll have to sort that
I have to
out.
confess that I do have my low carb beers.
Hmm.
I tried my first gluten free beer the other day.
How's it taste?
The taste wasn't bad, and I noticed it didn't have that effect that gluten tends to have on people. But yeah, no, it would be nice to have a celebratory drink with you sometime.
All right, we'll have to make that happen. What island are you on, by the way?
Oahu. I live right on the beach in Waikiki, the original high rise in Hawaii, in Oahu.
Yeah.
So I walk out my door right into the perfect surf.
I love it. I love
So,
it. Well, why don't you tell us one final story here, Bear, of some crazy shit that went down, a really exciting moment in your career, or something, some kind of defining moment for you in the
well,
tandem surf world.
I would say the hardest thing that I've ever done, is paddle my surfboard across the Molokai Channel. It's 28 miles of treacherous sea. It's known to be one of the most treacherous places in the world. It's where my good friend Clyde's brother, he's famous for the Eddy contest, passed away trying to save a sinking voyaging canoe. So it's a very treacherous channel, and I made the mistake one time of sitting at my home on the west side of Molokai and saying, I think I could make that paddle. And so I made the mistake of paddling it on a regular surfboard. Well, not a regular surfboard, a 45-pound tandem surfboard. They were heavier then. And I remember setting my compass to cross that channel. I taped it to my board, and I left at night because I knew it was going to take a long time, and I was hoping I would have an incoming tide by the time I got to Oahu. So I thought I would paddle against an outgoing tide, leaving the island, hoping I would have an incoming tide when I got there. And it took me 10 hours and 19 minutes. So I ended up paddling against the tide.
Oh
There was,
man.
double and almost triple overhead surf. There's a strong ocean current moving into that channel. There's crosswinds. There's wind chop. There's, the tides that we talked about. And so it was kind of all against me. And so you talked about that thing of faith. And when I got close and when I set my compass, I looked at it, and I looked up, and it was pointing right at the full moon. So I paddled towards that full moon for 2 or 3 hours until it set, and continued on my trek to Oahu. When you miss an island in a Pacific Ocean there, you've got 2,500 miles before you get to another piece of land. So you paddle at an angle so that the current will get you to the island you're getting to. And I remember when I got close, the rip off of the waves were breaking so hard against the cliffs that there was a big rip tide pushing back from Oahu. Plus the tide, the lunar tide was at its peak, and happened to be pushing back too. And at that point, and I just paddled through a ton of mana warrior. I got a bunch of jellyfish stings. And it's at that point where, like you said, faith, faith puts your hand in the water one more time. I remember when I was training for my black belt, someone was sitting on my shoulders while I was doing my push-ups saying, you can do one more of anything. And so I just remembered, I just paddled one more stroke. I put my head down, looked at my compass, and just paddled one more stroke, just one more. And I think that's a lot about the virtue of fortitude and how we have to live our lives. You don't always have to look at the end. You have to look at just that next stroke. And if you keep doing that often enough, I remember I got swept past Oahu, and I was able to kind of wrap a little bit and paddle back, and I grabbed a hold of that harbor buoy over there by Hawaii Kai, and then a big wave came, crushed me against it, and then brought me all the way in the next mile and a half into the beach. And so I would just say to people, no matter what you're facing right now in your life, just put your hand in one more time and paddle just one more stroke. Just take it one stroke at a time, and through that fortitude, it'll build something within your character. It'll change your life, and you'll prevail.
That's epic. That's epic, Bear. Epic as your life itself. Thank you, my friend, for coming on the podcast. I look forward to coming on your radio show later on this week. That's going to be a lot of fun as well.
I can't believe I get to talk to you, dude.
No, it's awesome, my friend. It's a real honor. Thanks for the support always, and anything on it can do. We got your back, brother.
My brother. Mahalo nui loa.
All right. Aloha.
Aloha.